What if the pain in your life isn't random, but designed? What if the chaos you're facing isn't bad luck, but black magic? What if the person draining your spirit is the one smiling right next to you? This might sound like a plot twist in a horror movie, but it's far more ancient, far more real. From tribal shamans in Africa to the secretive, cunning folk of medieval Europe, people have long used spiritual power to control, torment, and sabotage others without a word, without a trace. And here's the chilling truth. Real spiritual attacks don't look like sparks flying or witches chanting. They look like subtle destruction. A mind clouded with confusion. A body that suddenly breaks down with no cause. A creeping sensation that you're never truly alone. They show up as friendships that turn cold overnight. As dreams that seem within reach then vanish like smoke. As constant failures you can't explain. Most people brush it off, calling it coincidence or stress. But this is exactly how witchcraft works best in silence, in the shadows, while you rationalize away the wreckage. And yet, here's the key. The moment you name it, you weaken it. The moment you acknowledge the unseen, you begin to reclaim your power. This video isn't about fear, it's about freedom. It's about mental clarity, spiritual strength, and taking back the path that was meant for you. If you've ever had the gut feeling that something unseen is pulling your life off course, you're not imagining it. And you're certainly not alone, because what you're about to discover are the warning signs, the psychological traps, and the hidden mechanics behind this silent sabotage. Let's begin. You now know that real spiritual attacks begin in silence, and the most dangerous when start in the mind. So let's go deeper. Sign 1. The hidden signs of spiritual sabotage. What if the chaos in your life was never your fault? What if the pain, the confusion, the constant obstacles weren't born from poor decisions, but planted, crafted, and executed by an invisible force? You're not paranoid, you're perceptive. Because real sabotage doesn't come with warnings or dramatic explosions. It comes dressed as normal life, until the cracks start showing and your peace begins to rot from the inside out. The Stoics knew this well. They believed the real battlefield isn't out there, it's within. Epictetus once taught, "We are disturbed not by things, but by the views we take of them." But what if someone is hijacking those views, whispering fear into your mind, injecting confusion into your confidence, draining the will you once had to keep going? In ancient Rome, leaders feared sorcery more than swords. Why? Because once your perception is altered, your entire reality bends. Marcus Aurelius urged himself to guard his mind like a fortress, because when your mind is compromised, your strength collapses from within. That is the first and most insidious sign of spiritual sabotage. It begins with an invisible weight on your soul. Tasks that once felt easy now feel impossible. Your emotions swing wildly without explanation. Your thoughts lose their sharpness. Relationships grow distant. Finances dry up. Your health falters. And nothing around you adds up. So what do? You blame yourself. And that is the trap. Sabotage works best when it wears your mask, when it makes you think the war is your fault. It twists your natural rhythm, turns your strengths into uncertainty, disguises its blows as your own bad choices. While you overanalyze every step, something unseen is pulling the strings behind the curtain. The Stoics taught that awareness is the key to liberation. Seneca once wrote, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than necessary." He wasn't being poetic, he was being precise. If your suffering feels like it's too much, if it weighs heavier than the situation deserves, it may not even belong to you. And that is your entry point to power. To regain control, you must become an observer, an inner guardian watching every mental ripple. Start tracking what drains you. Ask yourself, do I always feel exhausted after seeing a certain person? Do my goals fall apart after moments of progress? Does my motivation disappear after being in a specific place? These aren't random glitches, they're signals. Psychologists might call it environmental programming. Ancient mystics call it energy manipulation. Stoics, they call it illusion. The illusion that you are broken, that you're weak, that you're not enough. But illusions lose their grip the moment you name them. Clarity is your weapon. When you return to inner stillness, the fog starts to lift. When you stop reacting and begin observing, you start to see the attack's architecture and with it, the path to freedom. Because when you finally call it by its name, sabotage, it begins to lose its power. You were never the problem, you were the target. And that realization isn't a defeat, it's your turning point. Your rebirth. So begin to pay attention. Notice what weakens you. Reflect on what steals your focus. Measure what consistently leads you away from your purpose. Your awareness is your sword. Your discipline is your shield. The Stoics didn't pretend. Darkness didn't exist, they simply refused to bow to it. And now it's your turn. Now that you see the attack for what it truly is, sabotage, the next phase of the battle begins. Because awareness is just the start. The real war? It's for your energy. Sign 2. When your energy drains and nothing makes sense. Have you ever woken up feeling completely exhausted? Even though you did everything right. You didn't stay up late. You didn't overwork. You ate well, slept soundly, exercised just enough. Yet somehow, it feels like something invisible pressed its weight onto your chest overnight. You drag yourself through the day with no explanation. No illness, no event, no reason, just a constant sense that your soul is slowly leaking out. This isn't laziness. This isn't burnout. This is something far more dangerous, spiritual interference. And it's one of the most common weapons used in spiritual warfare, especially in the form of witchcraft or manipulation by intention. Because energy is everything. It fuels your clarity, your drive, your resilience. It is your power, your presence, your protection. When that energy is drained, you become vulnerable, easily confused, easily led, easily broken. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. But what happens when the attack isn't from the outside, but inside your mind? What happens when your thoughts feel like smoke? Your motivation flickers like a dying candle, and the fire within you starts to go out without any visible cause? That's when you know something deeper is at work, something hidden, something designed to go unnoticed. And that's what makes this kind of sabotage so terrifying. It hides behind logic. You start blaming your routine, your diet, your habits. You try journaling, meditating, adjusting your schedule. But nothing seems to bring clarity. It's like searching for a wound that doesn't bleed, because it isn't in your body. It's in your spirit. No matter how much you rest, the exhaustion lingers. No matter how much silence you seek, the noise in your mind doesn't fade. That's because witchcraft and spiritual interference don't always need spells or rituals. Often, all it takes is intention. That focused intention creates emotional static, like an unseen signal jamming your natural frequency. You become misaligned, off rhythm. You start second-guessing your instincts. You try to act, but your will collapses. You chase joy, but your heart doesn't respond. Even the things you once loved, the passions that lit you up, suddenly feel dull, distant, or meaningless. That's not a coincidence. That's targeted suppression. An ancient Stoic thought. The soul was seen as a sacred flame, something that burned within us, keeping us warm, alive, and clear. But what happens when that flame begins to flicker? What happens when the fire goes out? Your energy, as we've seen, is more than just stamina. It's the flame that fuels your clarity, your choices, your very sense of self. But what happens when that flame is not only dimmed, but hijacked? The Stoics believed that your inner fire must be protected, nourished, and shielded from corruption. Seneca once wrote, "As is a tale, so is life, not how long it is, but how good it is what matters." He wasn't just talking about time. He was talking about quality, the depth of your presence, the state of your soul. Because once someone corrupts your energy, they don't just take your peace. They steal the essence of your life. And here's the disturbing twist. Sometimes the one draining you is someone you love. A trusted friend, a romantic partner, a family member. Not all manipulation is calculated or cruel. Some people are so wounded, so internally fractured, that they pull from others just to stay upright. Some do it knowingly. Others have no idea. But the result is the same. You walk away drained, while they walk away glowing, illuminated by your stolen light. Have you ever noticed how spending time with certain people leaves you feeling heavier? Not just emotionally, but spiritually. Your mind feels foggy, your body slower, your self-belief wobbles. That's not a random feeling. That's an energy exchange. And the worst part? You never agreed to it. Modern psychology calls these people energy vampires. Ancient mystics called them psychic parasites. The Stoics had a simpler term: the unwise, those who live without virtue, who feed on others because they cannot generate light from within. To take back your energy, you must start with fierce honesty, through awareness, through deep self-examination. You don't need to know the exact spiritual method being used against you. You only need to recognize the symptom, trust your fatigue, honor your instincts, and know this truth: your energy is sacred. It is your most valuable currency. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop resisting your exhaustion and start listening to it, something powerful shifts. Fatigue is not always weakness. Sometimes it's your spirit setting off an alarm, firing a flare into the dark, a signal that says, something is off. Something is feeding on me. And that moment, that's when you draw the line. The Stoics believed in detachment, not from life itself, but from anything that threatens the soul. Epictetus warned that the greatest danger isn't what happens outside us, it's what we allow to shape our inner state. It is not things that disturb us, he wrote, but our opinion of things. But what if those opinions aren't even yours anymore? What if your emotions have been shaped by someone else's intention? What if your internal compass is no longer pointing true north because it's being pulled by hidden forces? That's when detachment becomes more than wisdom. It becomes survival. Start with small actions. Cut contact with those who drain you. Cleanse your environment. Reclaim your quiet. Fast from noise. Notice how your body reacts to different people, places, and even thoughts. Your truth is already in your nervous system. You just have to listen. Because the more honest you are with your energy, the less vulnerable you become to manipulation. And here's the deeper truth. Your energy is your boundary. And once you reclaim it, you become a force no one can twist. Once you begin to protect your energy, treating it like sacred gold, you'll start to see just how many hands were reaching in to take it. The strongest people in the world aren't always the loudest. They're the clearest. And that clarity comes from protecting their inner fire like it's life itself. So if you ever feel like your soul is slipping, like something is pulling at your spirit and you can't explain it, pause. Pay attention. Because now you know what once seemed like confusion might actually be a pattern. And when you can see the pattern, you can break it. But what happens when the attack doesn't stop while you're awake? What happens when it follows you into your sleep? Sign 3. The shadow behind your nightmares. There are moments when your eyes are closed, your body still, and yet you're not alone. You drift into dreams, but the dream feels heavier than rest. You jolt awake, heart pounding, air thin, unable to shake the feeling that something or someone was with you in the dark. This is not your imagination. This is invasion. When someone targets you spiritually through witchcraft, dark intention, or obsessive emotional energy, their influence doesn't stop when you fall asleep. They follow. They reach for the one place that should be untouchable. Your subconscious. Your dreams, your hidden sanctuary, become their battlefield. Nightmares aren't always random. Sometimes they're encrypted messages. Sometimes they're spiritual warnings. The Stoics believed the mind must be trained like a muscle. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each day to master his perception, to return to reason, to not be ruled by emotion. But even he recognized a failure. Deeper truth. Dreams often reveal what we fail to confront while awake. And when your dreams turn dark, when they become repetitive, disturbing, or violently symbolic, it's often a sign that something spiritual is bleeding through into your sleep. Witchcraft doesn't always arrive in the form of potions, candles, or rituals. Sometimes it manifests as presence. A psychic force, silent but targeted, sent to haunt your inner world. You start waking up at exactly 3 a.m., night after night, with no logical reason. You dream of being chased, trapped, watched. You see unfamiliar faces, or worse, hear voices with no body at all. And sometimes the dream vanishes completely, but the fear stays. You wake up sweating, disoriented, your chest heavy, your breath shallow. These aren't just nightmares. These are signs. Spiritual interference has entered the dream realm. In ancient cultures, from Egyptian to Greek, African to Native American, dreams were never dismissed as mere brain activity. They were seen as sacred territory, the soul's domain, a realm where spirits, ancestors, enemies, and unseen entities could visit, manipulate, or wage silent war. But today, we've forgotten. We call it anxiety. We call it stress. We medicate it, suppress it, laugh it off. But the soul knows when it's under attack. And here's why this sign is especially dangerous. Most people ignore it. They brush off the paralysis. They dismiss the pressure on their chest. They silence the voice that said they were being watched because it's just a dream. But what if it's not your mind playing tricks? What if it's your mind trying to protect you? Epictetus once said, "First, say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do." But how can you do what must be done if even your dreams are under siege? We've just uncovered a chilling truth. Your sleep, the one place meant for restoration, can be silently invaded. But if your dreams have become a battlefield, then it's time to fight back with intention. Because when your subconscious is under attack night after night, your spirit begins to suffer silently. If rest leaves you weaker instead of stronger, it's no longer rest, it's a warning. There are patterns to watch for. Do your nightmares follow the same disturbing themes? Falling, being chased, trapped in endless hallways, drowning, being attacked by unfamiliar faces in places that don't make sense, but feel hauntingly familiar. These aren't just bad dreams, these are symbols. And symbols always point to something deeper. Start asking yourself, do you wake up more exhausted than when you fell asleep? Does your body feel heavier, your heart anxious, your thoughts foggy? That's not normal. That's a sign of energetic extraction, a draining of your spiritual life force while you sleep. But here's the most alarming signal of all. Do those dreams follow you into the day? Do you find yourself feeling down, disconnected, or inexplicably afraid, without any clear cause? That's the shadow lingering. That's the residual energy that entered through your sleep and stayed behind, trailing you into the daylight. Your dreams are not meaningless. They are sacred. And you must begin treating them with the same seriousness as your waking thoughts. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." And indeed, it takes courage, deep inner bravery, to confront what haunts you when the lights are out and your defenses are down. It takes discipline to protect your inner world, even while unconscious. So what can you do? First, recognize that your dreams are a sacred space. They're not chaotic noise. Start recording them, write them down the moment you wake up. You'll notice patterns, symbols, names, loops. What hides in darkness begins to dissolve the moment you bring it into the light. Second, purify your mind before sleep. Detach from emotional clutter. Avoid negative media. Don't carry unresolved tension or digital noise into the sanctuary of your dreams. Your mind is not a trash bin. It's a temple. Third, build your mental armor. You may call it prayer, affirmation, or visualization. The Stoics didn't use these modern terms, but they practiced them. They rehearsed virtue. They reflected daily. They built shields of moral clarity to guard their minds. Before bed, they returned to reason. You must do the same. And finally, speak the truth aloud. Call out what has haunted you. Name the presence. Reject it. It only has power if it remains unspoken. The shadow feeds on denial. But when you meet it with clarity and courage, you starve it. You strip it of control. You chase it out with truth. Because here's the deeper truth. If your dreams are under attack, it means your soul carries something powerful. Your light is blinding to those in darkness. Your growth threatens what seeks control. But once you awaken, once you understand the value of your spirit, everything changes. Once you stop running from your nightmares, once you confront them, head-on, you begin to reclaim something even more powerful, your soul. And with that power awakened, it becomes clearer that the attack isn't just happening in your mind or your dreams. Sometimes, it spills over into your external world. Sign 4. The pattern of collapse that feels engineered. You start building your life. You make a plan. You commit. You finally feel momentum, like the universe is aligning in your favor. And then, without warning, it all unravels. Everything you were building starts to collapse, brutally, without a clear reason. At first, you tell yourself it's just bad luck. The second time, a strange coincidence. But when it keeps happening again and again, you can no longer pretend. This isn't chance. This is design. There's a type of spiritual sabotage that doesn't directly attack your body, dreams, or even energy. It waits. It watches. It lets you climb just high enough. and then right when you're reaching for something important, it strikes. Not in chaos, not randomly, strategically. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." It's one of the most famous Stoic teachings, a call to transform obstacles into strength. There's a crucial difference between challenge and sabotage. One sharpens your character. The other is designed to shatter it. When your career keeps derailing no matter how hard you try. When relationships fall apart the moment they grow serious. When money vanishes just as you find stability. When every victory feels cursed with an invisible consequence. That's not ordinary struggle. That's not just life being hard. That is engineered collapse. Witchcraft, spiritual manipulation, and dark intent aren't always loud or theatrical. They are surgical, precise, patient. They strike when it matters most. When you're evolving. When you're becoming the version of yourself that can no longer be controlled. This type of sabotage doesn't shout. It whispers. It wraps itself in logic, bad timing, coincidence, miscommunication. It counts on your confusion. It waits for you to blame yourself, to call it fate, to internalize the failure so deeply that you stop reaching altogether. But the Stoics would reject that silence. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And he was right, but he also warned that a wise person must learn to separate internal error from external interference. Because the moment sabotage becomes invisible, it becomes powerful. So how do you uncover it? You study the pattern. Ask yourself honestly, does it feel like every time you get close to something meaningful, something always, somehow, falls apart? Not occasionally, not rarely, but predictably. You launch a project, and suddenly a crisis hits. In the last section, we saw that repeated collapse isn't always chaos. It can be a calculated pattern. But if you're seeing the same cycle over and over again, despite your best efforts, it's time to consider a deeper cause. You build a connection, and out of nowhere, miscommunication rips it apart. You rise finally, and then crash back down. Without warning. It feels like someone or something keeps hitting reset on your life. Again and again and again. This is where Stoic clarity becomes your sharpest weapon. The Stoics trained themselves to live in alignment with nature, to move with flow, to act with purpose. So when the flow is constantly blocked, when each step forward is met with unexpected destruction, that's not life humbling you. That's life trying to warn you. In ancient Rome, spiritual interference wasn't ignored, it was addressed. Leaders wore protective amulets. They performed cleansing rituals. Not out of superstition, but out of strategy. Because the Romans understood something modern society has forgotten. The outer world often reflects a battle happening in the unseen. There are forces, energies, even people who benefit when you stay broken. Some don't want you to rise because your rise disrupts the system they feed on. And sometimes, it's not even personal. It's programmed. Someone sent it, or someone fed it. A curse, a ritual, a hateful intention, repeated again and again, like a twisted prayer. These dark intentions don't want your body. They want your becoming. Because your growth, your evolution, your success, it's spiritual. It's sacred. And every time you level up, you shake the foundations of everything that profits from your weakness. So what can you do? First, recognize that not every failure is your fault. This isn't an excuse, it's a diagnosis. You can't repair what you refuse to acknowledge. And the truth is this: If your life keeps collapsing in unnatural ways, it's not always a lesson. Sometimes, it's interference. Second, fortify your boundaries. Be ruthless about who gets access to your time, your ideas, your spirit. People carry energy. Intentions ride words. So protect your vision like it's sacred gold, because it is. Third, cleanse spiritually. This isn't some modern trend. This is an ancient, timeless practice. Cold water, sacred fire, silence, intention. Call it prayer, ritual, or a reset. The purpose is the same: to break the pattern, to interrupt the collapse, to say, enough. Finally rebuild, but this time with awakened awareness. Now that you've seen what sabotage feels like, you'll recognize it quicker. You'll feel the resistance in a conversation. You'll hear the crack in someone's voice when they fake support. You'll sense when a door closes not by nature, but by force. And most importantly, you'll stop letting that force define you. Because here's the deeper truth: now that you've begun to recognize the pattern, how sabotage can disguise itself as failure, it's time to go even deeper. Because what keeps falling apart in your life may not be yours to fix. Some things aren't broken, they're corrupted. Some things aren't setbacks, they're signs you're being diverted. You're not cursed. You're targeted. And that changes everything. It means you're dangerous to the forces that want you silent. It means your light threatens something in the dark. And now it's time to reclaim every broken piece they tried to scatter. Because in this next and final sign, we move past the collapse, we go beyond the symptoms. We expose the entire war, the one you didn't even know you were in. Sign 5. Awakening to the war you didn't know you were in. You were never just tired. You were being drained. You were never just unlucky. You were being blocked. You were never just overthinking. You were being targeted. Now, slowly, the pieces are coming together. You're starting to see it. The signs. The strange timing. The sabotage. The shadow behind the curtain. And it hits you. This was never random. Never coincidence. This has always been war. Not a loud, obvious war, but a quiet one, an invisible one. A war fought not with weapons, but with energy, emotion, thought, and spirit. And here's the sobering part. Most people spend their entire lives asleep inside of it. They curse themselves for their misfortunes. They blame others for their constant failure. But they never stop to ask the most important question: who gains from my collapse? Who benefits when I stay stuck? But you're not most people. You're waking up. And this final sign isn't just a warning, it's a revelation. You are under spiritual attack because you are spiritually valuable. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You must build up your life action by action, and be content if each one achieves its goal as far as it can." But what happens when every action you take is intercepted? When your goals are distorted? When your life path is slowly being hijacked by something you can't see? You're no longer simply reacting to life's randomness. You're battling for your destiny. Witchcraft doesn't always look like candles and curses. Often, it's silent, subtle, sustained. It's jealousy, it's obsession, it's hatred focused with emotional intent. And when someone concentrates on you with intensity through envy, gossip, manipulation, that intention becomes a kind of spiritual force. That's magic, one of the oldest kinds. Sometimes it comes from strangers. Other times, it comes from those closest to you. The ones who smile at your success while secretly resenting your light. They don't need a spell. They only need focus. And focus, when fueled by emotion, is among the most ancient forms of attack. That is the battlefield you're standing on. And whether you asked for it or not, you've already been drafted. But there is a way to fight back. The Stoics knew this. They practiced fortress thinking, training their minds not just to endure, but to become untouchable. Now that you've seen the war, the silent battle, you've unknowingly been part of. It's time to prepare, not just to endure, but to overcome. The Stoics never taught us to escape hardship. They taught us to rise within it. They believed in mental resilience, in inner fortresses. Epictetus taught, nothing outside the mind can harm you unless you invite it in. But here's the hard question. What if you've been inviting it without even knowing? What if you've been absorbing energy, emotions, and invisible attacks simply because you didn't believe they were real? What if the harm wasn't from weakness, but from blindness? Because ignorance, that's the enemy's most powerful weapon. You can't fight what you refuse to see. But now, you see. You recognize the patterns, the constant fatigue, the confusion that fogs your thinking, the recurring collapse, the dark dreams, the coincidences that always seem to strike when you're at your strongest. You see how your surroundings have been weaponized, designed to keep you distracted, addicted, doubting, shrinking. And when you start to wake up, that's when the attacks intensify. That's not a setback. That's confirmation. Because this war isn't after your body. It's after your becoming. It's crafted to stop you from rising into your power, from living in your truth, from walking in your purpose, from claiming the space your soul was born to fill. Seneca wrote, difficulties strengthen the mind as labor strengthens the body. And yes, some pain does shape you. Some challenges are divine teachers, but not all pain is purposeful. Some of it is engineered, crafted to break your spirit, not build it, to twist your reality until you doubt your truth, to seduce you into comfort until you forget your calling, to numb you until fear becomes your compass, and surrender becomes your lifestyle. But you were not born to surrender. You were born to see clearly, to fight not blindly, but with wisdom. And that fight, it doesn't start out there. It begins within. You reclaim your mind. No more passive thinking. No more emotional leakage. No more handing over your energy to distractions, meaningless arguments, and soul-draining people. You draw your spiritual boundaries. You cleanse your space. You purify your thoughts. You declare, nothing enters my space without my permission. Nothing consumes my energy unless I allow it. You start watching, just like Marcus Aurelius examined his mind each morning. You filter, just like Epictetus sifted truth from illusion. You guard your peace, just like Seneca protected his soul from Rome's chaos. Because once you know you're in a war, you can win it. You were never weak. You were never broken. You were simply targeted. And now that you know, you become dangerous. Because the most dangerous person in this world, the most powerful person in a spiritual war, isn't the loudest. It's not the angriest or the most aggressive. It's the clearest. The one who cannot be manipulated by lies. The one who sees through the illusion. The one who reclaims their energy, rebuilds their mind, and refuses to fall back asleep. So, let them whisper. Let them gossip. Let them try. Because now you're awake. And once you awaken, there's no going back. You rise. You become the storm they tried to silence. You become the clarity they feared. You become the force they never expected. Yes, the war is real. But now, so are you. You are not a victim of random misfortune. You are not cursed. And you are not powerless. You are in a war for your soul, your energy, and your purpose. And now that you've seen the signs, you hold something sacred. The power to fight back. The attacks on your spirit, your sleep, your progress, they were never random. They were targeted. Engineered to keep you small, silent, and lost in confusion. But now you see through the chaos. You recognize the sabotage. And you are ready to reclaim everything they tried to steal. As Epictetus once said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Now that you know the truth, your response becomes your revolution. You rise above the noise. You fortify your mind. You take back your power, and you never go back to sleep. So now the question is, what will you do with this clarity? Will you allow it to guide you to your highest potential? Or will you let the world lull you back into silence? This is your moment. Break the chains, stand strong. Stand true. And if this message stirred something deep inside you, don't keep it to yourself. Drop a comment below and share your truth. What was the moment you realized you were under attack? And how will you protect your energy from now on? Let's rise together. Let's speak truth. Let's reclaim our power. And always remember, you are more powerful than you've been told. And now that you're awake, keep rising.